The moonlight flickered through the haze of streetlights, casting shadows that twisted into unnatural shapes as Tasha Williams ran through the empty streets of Rosewood, a small town on the outskirts of South Carolina. The pain in her abdomen was unbearable. Her breath came in sharp, desperate gasps, and her legs, heavy with pregnancy, could barely keep up with the fear propelling her forward. Her dark skin glistened with sweat under the glow of the street lamps as she stumbled, trying to outrun the man chasing her. The siren wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Her mind raced, but she knew she couldn't outrun it. The cop in the patrol car was relentless, closing in on her fast. Officer Rick Ford. A man she knew all too well, his past littered with complaints of racist tendencies, his temper a fuse just waiting to ignite. He was hunting her, chasing her down the dark streets of Rosewood like a prey he was sure he'd catch. He had no intention of stopping, not until she was caught, no matter the cost. Tasha's hand instinctively reached for her swollen belly, a silent plea that her child would be safe. She had to get away. She had to escape the terror, escape the man who had haunted her and countless others in this town. But there was nowhere left to hide. A deafening screech of tires echoed through the narrow street, and before Tasha could react, Officer Ford's patrol car slammed into a parked vehicle nearby, sending it skidding to the side. The cop was out of the car before the engine even died, his boots hitting the pavement with a hard, determined step. "Where do you think you're going, girl?" Ford spat, his eyes wide with anger. His uniform seemed to glow under the streetlights, but his rage was darker than anything the light could expose. Tasha stumbled backwards, terror flooding her chest. "I'm not your enemy, Ford," she screamed, her voice a raw mixture of fear and defiance. But it was no use. He was already moving toward her, his hand clenching into a fist. Her breath hitched as he grabbed her by the arm and yanked her forward. The force of his grip made her head spin. She was vulnerable, she knew it. A pregnant woman running down the street at night was all too easy a target for a man like him. But she wasn't ready to give up, not yet. The attack came too quickly before she could even react. Without warning, Ford raised his boot and drove it into her stomach. Tasha's scream was lost in the night air as the force of the blow sent her crashing to the ground, her body slamming into the cold pavement. The sidewalk turned crimson beneath her, the blood from her split lip mingling with the sharp sting in her abdomen. She gasped for breath, her body trembling, but she refused to fall into unconsciousness. Not now. Not when she had a child to protect. Ford stood over her, watching with cold, pitiless eyes. "You shouldn't have run, Tasha," he growled, his voice dripping with malice. "Now you'll pay the price." But just as he moved to take another step, a shadow passed over them. The air shifted. There was a sudden sense of unease and omen. It was the kind of tension only a man like Aaron could bring. From the darkness emerged Aaron Williams, his tall frame casting a long shadow on the ground. He moved with the grace of a predator, his muscles taut, his eyes burning with rage. He had heard the scream. He had felt the gut-wrenching surge of panic the moment his wife's voice was drowned by pain. Aaron was a man with a history, a man who had seen death and destruction up close. He had been a soldier, a fighter, and the darkness that lived inside him had never fully left. Tasha's eyes flicked to him, relief flooding her body, but the fear still gripped her heart. "Aaron," no, she started, but the words were cut off as he moved past her with a fury that seemed to consume him. He was a man on a mission now. His heart was racing, not with fear, but with the overwhelming need to protect the woman he loved. And to do that, he would do anything at all. The world he knew was filled with shadows, and in this moment, he embraced them. Aaron's footsteps were silent, but each one was deliberate. He didn't even acknowledge Ford, who stood there, unaware of the approaching storm. Without a word, Aaron's fist shot forward, crashing into Ford's face with a force that left the officer staggering backward, his nose already bloodied. "That was for her," Aaron growled, his voice low and dangerous. Ford grunted, wiping the blood from his face as his eyes flicked from Aaron to Tasha, then back to Aaron, now realizing just how much trouble he was in. "You don't know who you're messing with," Ford said, trying to find his balance. "I'm a cop. You think you can just—" But Aaron was already on him. He didn't wait for Ford to finish his sentence. His combat training kicked in as his fists landed like thunder on Ford's chest, sending him to the ground with a sickening thud. Aaron was ruthless now, driven by the primal need to protect his wife and their unborn child. "You don't get to hurt her," Aaron spat, each word punctuated with a punch. Ford's body jerked beneath the assault, but he wasn't done yet. His hand reached for the gun at his side, and that was all Aaron needed to see. In a split second, Aaron grabbed Ford's wrist, twisting it violently, forcing the gun to the ground. The noise of metal scraping against the pavement filled the air. "I warned you," Aaron said, his voice colder now, the man he once was a soldier, a protector rising to the surface once again. Ford struggled, but Aaron was too fast, too strong. With one final shove, Ford was incapacitated, lying unconscious on the ground. Aaron stood above him, chest heaving, his fists still clenched from the violent exchange. Tasha, still on the ground, reached out for him. Her voice was soft, laced with concern. "Aaron, we have to go. Please, we have to go." Aaron's face softened as he looked down at her. But there was no time for words, no time to bask in the relief of victory. "We will," he promised, pulling her into his arms, his hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Aaron helped Tasha to her feet, her face pale but determined. The night was eerily quiet now, the chaos of the moment fading into an unsettling silence. Ford was still unconscious, lying in a pool of his own blood, but Aaron didn't waste time looking back. They had no time to waste. Their life in Rosewood was no longer safe. The system was broken, and Ford was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. But as they walked away, a promise burned in Aaron's heart. This wasn't over. Ford was just the beginning. They would find the people who had enabled the corruption, the racism, and the violence, and they would make them pay. Slowly, methodically. Aaron's revenge was just beginning, and it would shock everyone who dared to stand in his way. When the past catches up with you, there's no running from it. Aaron Williams knows that better than anyone. He's seen the cost of justice and the price of vengeance. And as he walks away from the wreckage of his marriage, the echoes of his wife's screams still haunt him. The question now is simple: will love and revenge coexist, or will one consume the other in the end? The chase for justice has only just begun. Before the story continues, pause for a moment, kindly hit the like and subscribe button. Every week we dive into stories of justice, betrayal, and redemption, where nothing is ever as it seems, and make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Now, let's get back to the story. The night is a canvas, and on it, every moment paints a picture. For Tasha and Aaron, each brushstroke was a testament to their love forged through struggles, tears, and dreams of a better tomorrow. But soon, that love would be tested in ways they never imagined. A storm was coming, and only time would tell if it would tear them apart or bring them closer together. Tasha's strength wasn't just physical. It was a quiet force that emanated from her soul. In her late 20s, she had seen enough of life's injustices to make her heart hardened in places, yet her spirit remained unyielding. Tasha was pregnant, carrying her first child, a son she already loved fiercely despite never having met him. The pregnancy brought out both a fierce protectiveness and a vulnerability she hadn't known before. Her life, which had once been centered around her activism and relentless drive to make her community a better place, was now shifting into an unknown territory of motherhood. Born and raised in the heart of Rosewood, Tasha had always felt the weight of history bearing down on her. The town was a place where the streets were littered with whispers of past civil rights struggles, where the wounds of inequality had never fully healed. As a social worker, she poured her heart into every case she took, fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves, especially within the Black community. But this town, with all its potential, was also a place where the shadow of racism loomed large. Tasha's purpose wasn't just to right the wrongs of the system, she wanted to change hearts. and that drive was the core of who she was. But it also made her a target for those who believed that things should stay the way they always had been, and those like Officer Rick Ford, who would stop at nothing to maintain the status quo. She knew that being pregnant in this time, with the world changing faster than she could keep up, made her vulnerable. But she also knew she would never back down. The thought of raising her son in a world of injustice terrified her, but the thought of letting him inherit a legacy of silence was far worse. Aaron, on the other hand, was a man molded by violence, forged in the intensity of war, and tempered by the peace that he found only in Tasha. Former military, former soldier, a title that could have defined him for the rest of his life, had it not been for the love that had quietly shifted everything he'd ever known about the world. In his mid-30s, Aaron was no stranger to death. His service in the military had forced him to confront the darkest parts of human nature, and over the years his heart had built walls of steel. When the chaos of war left him broken, it was Tasha who offered him solace. It wasn't her beauty, nor the way her laugh could light up a room. It was her courage, her refusal to bow down in the face of adversity. Aaron had admired that, perhaps because he had seen how fragile it made her in a world that was determined to break people like her, and that fragility made him want to protect her at any cost. Aaron's love for Tasha wasn't just a feeling, it was a mission. He loved her in a way that was visceral, the kind of love that would make him burn the world to the ground to keep her safe. He wasn't just her husband, he was her guardian, her shield. But that love came with a price. The violent past he had run from was catching up with him, and it was about to consume everything he held. In contrast to Aaron's honor and Tasha's righteousness stood Officer Rick Ford, no stranger to authority and no stranger to violence. He represented everything that was wrong with the system, a system he had used to climb to the top. To those who didn't know him, he was just another cop doing his job. To those who had been in his path, he was a nightmare. Ford had spent his entire career hiding his true nature behind a badge, a uniform, and a smile. He wasn't just racist, he was a man who believed that people like Tasha were beneath him, expendable. His interactions with the black community were always laced with disdain, and his brutality was often dismissed as just doing his job. But behind his authoritarian demeanor lay a man who had grown so used to power that he saw no reason not to abuse it. His history of corruption ran deep, fueled by dark secrets and long-standing prejudice. What Ford never expected was for someone to challenge him the way Tasha had. She had always fought for justice, but she had also inadvertently crossed a line with Ford, one that he was willing to kill to protect. The chemistry between Tasha and Aaron was undeniable, electric, and intense. But it wasn't just the passion that defined them, it was the trust they had in each other. They knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, their fears and desires. And they were each other's mirror, reflecting a love that had been built on survival. Before the incident with Officer Ford, their days were simple yet beautiful, filled with mundane moments that held more meaning than most people could realize. It was early morning, and the sunlight was creeping through the curtains of their modest but cozy home. The sound of birds chirped outside, but it was the peaceful silence between them that made the world feel still. Tasha sat at the kitchen table, a mug of coffee in her hands, her belly gently rounding as she rested her other hand on it. Aaron walked in, his military-cut hair a bit tousled from sleep, and his blue shirt clinging slightly to his chest as he stretched. He had a look on his face, a kind of soft weariness that only she understood. Despite everything he had seen, he would always be tired at the end of the day, the ghosts of his past never quite leaving him. He leaned over, pressing a kiss to her forehead, his hand gently cupping her stomach. "How's our little warrior today?" he asked, his voice tender and full of adoration. Tasha looked up at him, a soft smile curling her lips. "He's kicking like crazy. I think he's already planning his escape." Aaron chuckled, sitting down beside her. "I can't wait to meet him. I swear, if he's anything like you, he's going to change the world." Tasha looked out the window for a moment, her expression growing thoughtful. I hope so, she said softly, her voice quieter now. I want to be able to give him a future, Aaron. A better future than what we've had. Aaron reached out, taking her hand in his, squeezing it. We will, Tasha. Whatever it takes. They shared a look then, one that spoke volumes, a mix of fear, love, and a shared understanding that the world was never going to make things easy for them. They both knew they were about to face something bigger than either of them could handle alone. But at that moment, they were enough for each other. Later that evening, the tension between them seemed to dissipate as they found themselves on the couch, winding down after a long day. Tasha was watching a movie, and Aaron was casually flipping through a book he had been reading. You still haven't told me what you think of my idea for the baby's name, Tasha said, her eyes mischievously glancing at him. Aaron smiled, glancing up over his book. You want to name him after a famous activist, huh? Tasha rolled her eyes, a playful grin spreading across her face. I'm just saying we could do something meaningful. Maybe after someone who fought for change. Aaron raised an eyebrow, leaning in to kiss her cheek. And what would you name him? Tasha bit her lip, trying to hide her smile. How about Malcolm, or Elijah? Aaron laughed, shaking his head. We're not naming our son after some revolutionary. He'll probably spend his life getting in trouble because of it. Tasha laughed too, the tension of the day melting away. Maybe you're right, but he'll still be proud of his name. Just don't go overboard with the historical figures. Okay? Let's not make the kid hate us before he even learns to walk. Tasha snuggled closer to him, resting her head on his shoulder. I think he'll love us no matter what. The chemistry between Aaron and Tasha was undeniable, each kiss, each glance, each quiet moment together, reinforcing the bond that would see them through the darkest days ahead. But the storm was coming. And when it did, everything they thought they knew would be shattered. The only question was whether love would be enough to carry them through the fires of betrayal and vengeance that were soon to be unleashed. The city lights blur into streaks of gold and red as Aaron speeds through the streets, the sound of the engine echoing in the silence of their car. Tasha clutches her stomach, her breath shallow and uneven, the memory of the brutal kick still fresh in her mind. The weight of what just happened presses down on her chest like a heavy stone. And yet, amidst the chaos, the bond between them has never felt more real. The stakes are higher than ever, and the love they share is both a sanctuary and a storm, one that could either save them or tear them apart. The sharp sting of the kick still echoes in Tasha's mind, but as Aaron gently helps her into the car, his hands steady despite the rage he feels, there's a moment of undeniable tenderness. Tasha's face is pale, her lips trembling as she tries to hold herself together. But her body is betraying her, each breath more difficult than the last. As Aaron starts the car, his eyes never leave her, worry etched deep into his features. Tasha's hand finds his arm, her fingers gripping it for support. She tries to steady herself, but the fear is too much fear for their unborn child, for the unknown consequences of what just happened, and for the man who has always kept her safe. In the rearview mirror, she catches a glimpse of the empty street, the haunting image of Officer Daniels still fresh in her mind. This can't be real. This can't be happening to us. Without warning, she leans in and kisses Aaron fiercely, passionately. It's as if the world has come crashing down, and the only way to escape it is in the warmth of each other's arms. It's a kiss of desperation, of longing, of comfort, but it's also a kiss of defiance. As their lips meet, the love they share fills the car, pushing away the fear and pain. For a fleeting moment, there is nothing but them, nothing but the promise they've made to each other. As they pull apart, Tasha looks into Aaron's eyes, and she can see it, the burning fire of revenge, the storm that is slowly building inside him. She knows this man. She knows his heart, his loyalty, and his fierce protection. But there's something darker now, something she hasn't seen before. His jaw clenches as he turns his eyes back to the road, his grip tightening on the wheel. Aaron, Tasha whispers, her voice shaky. Please don't do this. But the storm inside Aaron can't be quelled so easily. His fingers grip the wheel so tightly that his knuckles turn white. His mind races, filled with images of Officer Daniels, his hatred for Tasha, the way he kicked her, the way he showed no remorse. Aaron's pulse quickens as he drives faster, determined to find the man who caused the pain he can still feel in Tasha's eyes. He doesn't answer her immediately. Instead, he takes a deep breath, letting the silence settle between them. Tasha's hand rests on his leg, her fingers trembling, and he knows what she's trying to do. She's trying to hold him together. But Aaron can't be held together right now. The anger inside him is too strong, the need for vengeance too consuming. "Aaron, please," Tasha tries again, her voice soft but firm. "I don't want you to lose yourself in this. We can't fight this with violence. Not like this. Not for me." He looks at her, his face hard but filled with conflicting emotions. The love he has for her, the need to protect her, is overwhelming, but so is the fury that burns in his chest. He spent years running from the monster inside of him, the soldier, the killer, and for the first time in years, that monster is awake. "I'm not asking for your permission, Tasha," he says quietly, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm doing this because I have to, for you, for our son, for justice." Tasha recoils, her heart breaking as she hears the weight in his voice. She knows what this means. She knows the man he used to be, how easily he could slip back into that life, the life he had sworn to leave behind. His military training, his ability to fight, to kill, it was a part of him he had buried, but it was never far beneath the surface. She places a trembling hand on his arm, looking into his eyes. "You promised me, Aaron. You promised that you would never go back to that life. Not for anything. Not for anyone." But Aaron's eyes, dark with determination, flicker with it tells her nothing will stop him now. His jaw tightens, his hands gripped around the wheel like it's the only thing keeping him anchored to this world. "I can't just sit back and let him walk away with this," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen what people like Daniels do to us, what they think of us, and I'll be damned if I let him hurt you or anyone else." Tasha's heart aches as she watches him, the man she loves, but also the man she's afraid of becoming. She knows this rage, this pain, it's all-consuming, and the more Aaron tries to suppress it, the more it threatens to break free. She wants to protect him, just as much as she wants to protect their baby. But she knows the path he's choosing now will lead to more destruction than either of them can imagine. As they approach the outskirts of the city, the tension between them grows thicker, more unbearable. Tasha knows Aaron's heart, but she also knows that the past he's tried to bury could destroy everything. His military service, his time spent in war zones, in situations where life and death blurred together, had shaped him into the man he was. But it had also scarred him in ways he rarely spoke about. He carried the ghosts of his past like chains around his soul. "I know you're angry, Aaron," Tasha says softly, trying to calm the storm brewing between them. "But revenge, it won't bring you peace. It won't bring us peace. You've already given enough of yourself to that darkness. Don't let it take you again." For a moment, he doesn't respond, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The weight of her words hangs in the air, heavy and unresolved. But Aaron knows that Tasha's right, and yet, he can't let go of the burning need to make things right. The need to protect her, to fight for what's been taken from them, is too strong. "I have to do this, Tasha," he says, his voice now colder, more resolute. "I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for you, for our son." But Tasha knows what this means. This isn't just about revenge, it's about Aaron's struggle with himself, and she's terrified that, by the time it's over, there might be no way back. The darkness in Aaron's heart was growing. Tasha could feel it like a shadow creeping over them, threatening to swallow the love they shared. And with each passing mile, the road ahead seemed less like salvation and more like a trap. Aaron's promise to protect her was becoming a burden, one that threatened to destroy everything they had fought for. The tension that had been building between Aaron and Tasha boils over as he prepares for the inevitable confrontation. The city around them seems to hold its breath, the lights casting long shadows down the narrow streets and alleys where danger lurks. Aaron, now fully consumed by his rage and need for justice, has one objective: to find Officer Daniels and make him pay. His military training has kicked in his mind sharp, calculating, and prepared for whatever fight lies ahead. Tasha watches in silence as Aaron pulls on his tactical vest, checking his gear one final time. The determination in his eyes burns through the fog of uncertainty. His thoughts are a whirlwind. Daniels must answer for what he did to Tasha, to their unborn child. There's no turning back now. "I'm going after him, Tasha," Aaron says, his voice cold but steady. "Stay here." But Tasha knows Aaron too well. She can see the darkness in his eyes, the storm that's raging inside of him, and she can't bear the thought of him facing Daniels alone. She has to be with him, even if it means walking into the fire. The streets seem eerily empty as Aaron begins his search. Every corner they turn feels like a potential battleground, every alley a place where Daniels might lie in wait. The air is thick with anticipation, the tension building with each passing minute. Aaron's senses are on high alert. Every sound, every shadow, every movement is analyzed as he moves swiftly through the city, his mind focused, his resolve unwavering. He can almost taste the fight that's coming. At the edge of the city, Aaron finds the bar where Daniels has been known to hang out. A dive bar full of seedy characters and whispered conversations, and Aaron knows this is where the corrupt cop feels safe. He steps through the door, his eyes immediately scanning the room. The bartender doesn't bat an eye as Aaron walks in. He knows better than to ask questions. But as Aaron's gaze locks onto Officer Daniels, sitting in the far corner booth with a few of his crooked associates, he knows the time has come. Daniels sees him too, his eyes narrowing as he stands up slowly, reaching for the gun at his hip. "You really think you can take me down, soldier?" Daniels sneers, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You're just another angry man looking for a fight. But you'll regret this." Aaron's answer is a silent one. With a swift move, he grabs Daniels by the collar, throwing him into the nearby table. The room erupts into chaos, with Daniels' associates pulling out their weapons and aiming them at Aaron. But Aaron is already a step ahead. He moves with the precision of a trained killer, disarming one man and knocking another to the ground before Daniels can even react. The two men face each other in the center of the room, a violent tension thick in the air. Daniels swings first, throwing a wild punch that Aaron easily dodges. But Daniels is a cop, and he's not afraid to fight dirty. He quickly throws a knee into Aaron's stomach, followed by an elbow to the back of the neck. The blows hurt, but they don't slow Aaron down. His body is a machine, honed by years of combat, and the rage in his heart only fuels him more. They exchange brutal blows, Aaron's fists landing with power, his movements fluid and calculated, while Daniels fights with desperation, pulling out every trick in the book. He's a cop, and he knows how to use his training to exploit weaknesses, to take down an opponent with any means necessary. He fights dirty, aiming for Aaron's ribs, his legs, using every advantage he can. But Aaron is relentless. Each strike he lands is a reminder to Daniels that this is more than just a fight, it's a reckoning. Aaron lands a devastating punch that sends Daniels crashing to the floor, his head hitting the ground with a sickening thud. The room goes silent for a moment, the thrum of tension hanging in the air. But before Aaron can move in for the final blow, he hears the sound of footsteps, a sharp, frantic pace that cuts through the silence. Tasha bursts through the door, her eyes wide with panic as she sees Aaron standing over Daniels, his knuckles bloodied, his chest heaving. She's terrified for Aaron, terrified for what he's becoming, but also terrified for the consequences of what he's doing. "Aaron, stop," she cries, rushing toward him. "Please, stop." Aaron's gaze meets hers, and for a moment, everything in the world stops. The fight, the anger, the need for revenge, they all fade into the background as he looks at his wife. Her presence is like a lifeline, pulling him back from the brink of destruction. But the rage inside him doesn't vanish entirely. It's still there, still burning, threatening to consume him. Tasha's hand reaches out to him, trembling as she touches his arm. "You've already won, Aaron. You've shown him what he's done. But this won't fix anything." Aaron hesitates, the weight of her words sinking in. His eyes flicker from her to Daniels, who's groaning on the floor, struggling to get up. But Aaron doesn't move. His fists remain clenched at his sides, his breath ragged. The tension between them is palpable. One wrong move, one slip into the darkness, and he could lose everything. Tasha steps closer, and in that moment, Aaron sees the depth of her love for him. She's willing to risk everything, even her safety, to pull him back from the edge. Before he can say anything, Tasha's lips meet his in a fierce kiss. It's full of longing, desperation, and love, a kiss that speaks of everything they've been through and everything they still have left to fight for. The world around them fades as they lose themselves in each other, the love they share holding them together amidst the chaos. When they pull apart, Aaron's eyes soften, and for a moment the storm inside him quiets. He knows that Tasha is right, that revenge can never truly heal the wounds they've suffered, but the fire in his heart hasn't been extinguished completely. "I'm done," Aaron whispers, his voice hoarse, but there's a finality in it. "Let's go home." In the end, it wasn't the fight that defined them. It was the love that pulled them back from the brink of destruction. But even now, as they stand together, the storm isn't over. The road ahead is still fraught with danger, with uncertainty. The fight for justice is far from won, and vengeance still calls, echoing in the distance. And as Aaron and Tasha walk out of the bar, hand in hand, they both know that the real battle is only just beginning. The adrenaline rush from their earlier encounter with Officer Daniels starts to fade, but the weight of what's at stake continues to press down on Aaron and Tasha. As they lay low in a small, rundown apartment in a forgotten part of the city, Aaron can't shake the feeling that something doesn't add up. He's heard whispers before, rumors of a corrupt police force, but he never imagined that Daniels was just the tip of the iceberg. One evening, as they go over their next steps, Aaron gets a call from a mysterious source, a former colleague from his military days. The voice on the other end is low and urgent. "Aaron, you've stirred up a hornet's nest. Daniels isn't just a bad cop. He's part of a whole network. You didn't just cross him, you've crossed a lot of people." The realization hits Aaron like a punch to the gut. Daniels' racist behavior wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a symptom of a much deeper, darker problem. This network of corrupt officers, operating in the shadows of the city, has been terrorizing innocent people for years, and now Aaron and Tasha are caught in the middle of it. But what shakes Aaron to his core isn't just the revelation about the corruption, it's what he learns next. Daniels has a personal vendetta against Aaron. It goes back to Aaron's military days when they served in the same unit. Back then, Daniels was a different man, but his deep-seated racism and animosity toward Aaron grew over time, and it festered into something dangerous. Daniels had been holding a grudge ever since Aaron had made a critical decision on a mission that had ruined a plan Daniels was involved in. Aaron's action had cost Daniels a promotion, and in Daniels' eyes, Aaron had to pay. Aaron is stunned. He never thought their paths would cross again, let alone in such a violent and life-threatening way. The sense of betrayal weighs heavy on his chest. This man, someone who'd once shared the same battlefield, is now out to destroy him and everything he holds. Just when Aaron feels like they're getting a handle on the situation, things take a devastating turn. The next morning, they're jolted awake by a loud knock on the door. Aaron leaps to his feet, adrenaline coursing through his veins, just as a loud bang echoes from the street. Tasha, confused and scared, asks, "What's happening, Aaron? What's going on?" Aaron doesn't answer her, he just moves quickly, pulling Tasha toward the back door of the apartment. But as they make their escape, they spot a group of men in black uniforms, heavily armed, all with police badges visible on their belts. This is it. They've been found. "Tasha, run," Aaron orders as they break into a sprint down the alley. But the sight of her, pregnant and frightened, pulling ahead of him only makes his heart race faster. The sound of footsteps pounding on the concrete behind them is relentless. They know they can't outrun them forever. But Aaron is determined not to let anything happen to Tasha, and he pushes himself and her harder, faster. He's trained for moments like this, but even he knows there's only so much you can do against a force this big. They dart into another alley, but as they do, Tasha trips, falling to the ground hard. Aaron's heart skips a beat as he rushes to her side, pulling her up. But before they can get far, a voice calls out from the street. There they are. It's Officer Daniels' voice, cold, menacing. Tasha's eyes widen in terror. They know who we are now, she whispers, breathless, the fear in her voice unmistakable. Aaron tightens his grip on her hand, pulling her forward. We can't stop now. The couple is forced into a relentless flight across the city, their every move now a matter of life and death. They can't trust anyone, not even their own allies. The police have already infiltrated the underground networks Aaron and Tasha might have relied on for help. No one is safe anymore. The city, which once felt like home, now feels like a maze, a labyrinth filled with traps, shadows, and enemies. They hide in abandoned warehouses, alleyways, and even a few safe houses that Aaron had once trusted in his military days. But it's all becoming too dangerous. Aaron is a man on the run. And he's not just running from the corrupt officers chasing him, he's running from the life he used to know. The former military man who was once a hero to his country now finds himself a fugitive in his own city. But even as they run, the weight of his past and his vow to protect Tasha drives him forward. Tasha, too, is no longer the same woman she was just days ago. Her pregnancy is beginning to show, and she can feel the tension building inside of her. But even through the fear and exhaustion, there's a strength in her she's never known before. Every time they face a new danger, she stands by Aaron, pushing herself just as hard as he does. She knows the risks they're facing, but she refuses to let him do this alone. As they settle in for a brief respite in a dilapidated motel on the edge of town, the weight of their situation finally starts to sink in. Aaron looks at Tasha, his face drawn with exhaustion. Her own eyes are dark with worry, and despite the physical closeness they share, there's an emotional distance growing between them. They're both operating on raw nerves now, fighting not just for survival, but for the soul of their relationship. Tasha knows how deep Aaron's need for vengeance runs. She's seen the darkness that consumes him when he's driven by rage, and while she loves him with every ounce of her being, she's terrified of what he'll become if he continues down this path. I don't want you to lose yourself in this, Aaron, she says quietly, her voice trembling as she places a hand on his chest. We're already risking everything, but please don't let this destroy us. Aaron's heart aches as he looks at her. He knows what she's asking, and part of him wants to promise her that he'll walk away from the fight, that he'll protect their family at any cost. But another part of him, the part that still carries the weight of his military training, the part that has always fought for justice in a world that doesn't always reward it, feels the need to finish what he started. I can't, he whispers, his voice heavy with regret. Not after everything they've done. Not after what they tried to take from us. Tasha's hand falls from his chest, and the silence between them grows. For the first time, Aaron feels the full weight of the cost of his vengeance. But he also knows he can't stop now, not while Daniels and his corrupt network are still out there, threatening everything he holds. They hear sirens wailing in the distance, and Aaron pulls Tasha close, his lips brushing against her forehead. We're not safe here, he murmurs, voice strained. We have to move again. Now. Tasha looks up at him, her expression a mixture of fear and love. We'll keep running, but I need to know something. Aaron. What? Whatever happens, do you still love me? After all of this, after everything we've been through, do you still want me? Her voice cracks, the fear of losing him creeping in. She isn't sure she can survive losing him to his quest for vengeance. Aaron, looking at her with a softness that cuts through the turmoil in his heart, presses his lips to hers, a promise wrapped in pain and love. Always, he whispers, I'll fight for us. I'll fight for you. In the chaos of this twisted web they've been caught in, love and vengeance collide, threatening to tear them apart. As Aaron and Tasha continue their flight for survival, the question remains, will love be enough to save them, or will the pursuit of justice so steeped in darkness be the very thing that destroys them? The wind howls through the darkened forest, the trees creaking as if warning of the impending storm. A remote cabin, long abandoned and hidden from prying eyes, serves as the battleground for the final showdown. Aaron and Tasha have been tracked here by Daniels and his allies, a group of officers as corrupt as the man who orchestrated their hellish pursuit. There's no turning back now. This is the endgame. The night is alive with the sound of helicopters circling overhead and the distant growl of police vehicles racing through the woods. Aaron and Tasha are pinned down in a corner of the cabin, adrenaline flooding their veins. The walls echo with gunfire, and the crackle of radios fills the air as Daniels and his henchmen close in. Aaron, his military training kicking into overdrive, moves like a shadow through the darkness. He's prepared for this moment, for the fight that will end it all. He's already taken out a few of Daniels' men, their bodies sprawled out on the ground like discarded marionettes. But he knows Daniels is still out there, lurking like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Tasha, though pregnant, is every bit as determined to fight by Aaron's side. She's no stranger to danger, and her bond with Aaron has only strengthened their resolve. Every time she thinks of what's at stake, the life growing inside her, the future they've dreamed of, she steels herself. They've come too far to fail now. Through the smoke and chaos, Aaron finally sees him, Officer Daniels, standing in the doorway with a smirk twisted on his face, his gun drawn. The final confrontation has arrived. Time seems to slow as the two men lock eyes. Aaron's breath comes in short, sharp bursts. His pulse is pounding, his hands shaking not with fear, but with the raw need for vengeance. This isn't just about justice anymore. This is personal. Daniels had hurt the woman he loved, and now Aaron has him in his sights. The rage within him is a storm, ready to be unleashed. Daniels, seeing the look in Aaron's eyes, knows this is it. His smugness falters, replaced by a nervous edge. The corrupt cop pulls the trigger, but Aaron is faster. He dives to the side, the bullet missing by mere inches. He fires back, the sound of gunshots ringing in the cabin like thunder. The battle is ferocious. They are evenly matched in skill, each using every ounce of their training and determination. Aaron's fists collide with Daniels' jaw, sending him stumbling back, but Daniels doesn't relent. He fights dirty, twisting the rules in his favor, using the environment to his advantage. The two of them exchange brutal blows, punch after punch, each landing with bone-crushing force. But Aaron's mind isn't on the fight alone. His thoughts are with Tasha. Every second spent in combat is a second closer to her being in danger. As the fight rages on, a powerful blow from Daniels sends Aaron crashing to the ground. He's dazed, but he doesn't have time to recover. Daniels is moving in for the kill, the gun aimed directly at Aaron's chest. Just as the trigger is pulled, Tasha bursts into the room, her own gun drawn, and shoots Daniels' weapon from his hand. The impact is enough to throw Daniels off balance, and he stumbles back, momentarily stunned. Aaron scrambles to his feet, ready to end it, to finish the fight. He's so close. He can feel the heat of the rage burning inside him. With a single move, he could pull the trigger, end this nightmare once and for all, and avenge everything Daniels has taken from him. But then he hears her. Tasha's voice, pleading, frantic, cuts through the fog of his anger. "Aaron, please," she says, stepping in front of him, her hand trembling as it reaches for his arm. "Don't do it. Don't let him make you like them." Aaron freezes, the gun still in his hand, his body tense. He can feel the heat of his rage, the desire for revenge screaming inside him. But then he looks at Tasha. She's standing there, broken but strong. Her face is pale with fear, but her eyes are filled with love and desperation. "Aaron, I need you," she says, her voice a whisper now. "I need you to come back to me." Her words are a balm, soothing the raw wound of his anger. Aaron feels the fire inside him begin to cool, his grip loosening on the weapon. He drops the gun, his breath coming in shaky exhalations. His body is still trembling, but it's no longer from rage. It's from the realization of what Tasha is asking of him, not just to spare Daniels' life, but to spare himself from becoming the monster he's been chasing. "I'm not going to be like him," Aaron whispers, his voice breaking as he looks at Tasha. "I can't let this destroy me, or us." With a final, anguished look at Daniels, Aaron steps back. He pulls Tasha into his arms, holding her tight as the police storm into the cabin, their guns trained on the remaining officers. As the authorities move in to take Daniels and his men into custody, the tension in the room begins to dissipate. The fight is over. The danger is gone. And although their bodies are bruised and bloodied, there's a sense of quiet relief that settles over Aaron and Tasha. They've been through hell facing threats from all sides, pushing each other to their limits. But they've come through it together. Their love has been tested in the most unimaginable ways. And yet, here they are, standing side by side. Aaron reaches out to gently touch Tasha's face, his fingertips brushing against her skin. Her eyes are soft, filled with a mixture of love, fear, and a deep, aching gratitude. She knows how close they came to losing everything. "Are you all right?" Aaron asks, his voice rough, though there's a tenderness there now. Tasha nods, her hand resting on his chest. "I am now, as long as I'm with you." The sound of sirens wailing in the distance reminds them that the battle is over, that the nightmare is finally coming to a close. But the journey ahead remains uncertain. The world they live in has not changed, corruption still runs rampant, and their future is far from guaranteed. But one thing is clear, together, they can face whatever comes next. The camera pulls back as Aaron and Tasha stand in the aftermath of the battle, bruised but unbroken. The police begin to drag Daniels and his corrupt officers out of the cabin, their faces marked with defeat. But for Aaron and Tasha, the real victory is the quiet moment they share now, away from the violence, away from the chaos. Aaron leans down and presses his lips to Tasha's, their kiss slow and tender, full of unspoken promises. It's not just a kiss of relief, it's a kiss that carries the weight of everything they've fought for and everything they've lost. And for the first time in a long while, they feel at peace. As the sirens wail in the distance, Aaron and Tasha stand together, bruised but alive. The world may be a dangerous place, but here, in this moment, they have each other. Tasha's hands gently rest on his chest, the touch grounding them in a reality that still feels too surreal to believe. "We made it," she whispers, her voice a breathless mixture of hope and exhaustion. He leans down to kiss her, their lips brushing softly, a final act of healing. The future is uncertain, and the path ahead may still be fraught with danger. But in that kiss, they find the strength to face whatever comes next together. Their love, tested by fire, will endure. And for now, that is enough. After everything they've been through, Aaron and Tasha have one thing left: each other. But what would you have done in Aaron's shoes? Was his quest for revenge justified? Or did love ultimately show him a better way? Comment below and share your thoughts on the complexities of justice, love, and vengeance. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories. We want to hear your opinions. What do you think of Aaron's decision? How far would you go for the ones you love? Stay tuned for the next chapter.